Welcome to the Catalyst Lifestyle podcast. I am your host, Sunkiss, and we are back with episode 6. And tonight, once again, I have my co-host, Aria F. Wright.
Hi, what's going on?
Hi, Aria.
Hi.
How
Happy
you doing?
Sunday.
Happy Sunday, everyone.
Yes. I'm so glad we moved to Sunday because, not so much going on in the world and, in my house.
I know. And then like everybody can just relax, after church, go to
Yep.
brunch, and then come back and then sit down and watch us.
Sit down and watch us and relax and have a nice cocktail or just eat your dinner and, just listen to us talk, say stuff. We're going to say some good stuff today.
Say some good stuff today. And tonight we are talking about growing up biracial in a black movement.
Yes.
And tonight's going to be pretty interesting. And Ari, you and I have been talking about this for a while. And, recently, actually, it was last weekend?
Yeah.
Last weekend, right? Yeah. We've seen an uptick now more than ever, young men and young women expressing their views and beliefs in a time where they have also become like a target of racism, just like adults. Mm-hmm. And biracial families are caught in the middle, either having to choose either side or creating a balance within the home. And, I think tonight we should definitely speak on that and also give our point of views and speak on the difficulties that parents may have doing this in a biracial household, right? So, and with the black movement going on, like in the heightened sense of awareness, like what's you and I talked about it, but let's share a little bit with our audience. Like, what are your views right now?
As a mother, it's you just have to cringe at the thought of your child leaving your side when anything happens. And, I'm a mother. I've been a mother for 20 years, I think. And so, my son is actually, he does things on his own. So every single time he leaves the house, and he says, Mom, can I use the car to go anywhere? And especially when he's with his friends, it just, it does something. But, at one point you have to let go and you have to kind of make sure that the things that you've instilled in them, patience and, all of the different things that you've told them about if by chance they get stopped by police, things that they need to do, put their hands in sight, don't say much, just be very calm. All of those things are definitely, things that you have to continuously remind them to do. But even still, that's not enough. So there's always going to be a level of anxiety when you're a parent and you have a black child or any child going out into, what this crazy world is right now, where the police are just they're not trained to handle some of these situations. And I think they get a rise out of it, out of just, being really, really aggressive with some of these black teens, especially, and black men. There's too many cases to mention, but, I just cringe at the thought of it.
Yeah. And, like this past, again, I think it was like this past weekend, it was a case with the Brittany Gilliam family where police in Aurora, Colorado detained this family in a parking lot. And it was a mother and her, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 3 kids at gunpoint. Yeah, it was four kids, right?
Yeah, 2 of them I think they had in handcuffs on the ground. Correct. And the other 2, just deplorable, like horribly handled. And I believe it was the chief of police that just was like, it was an embarrassment, to her, like, and I believe she's a mother too. So it was just completely unacceptable. And to have these pictures, these images splattered all over the world about these poor kids, and they were just going to get their nails done. They were going to do something, a spa day. Like, we're in the middle of COVID. Like, how could you mistake a car or what is, I don't even know what it is.
No, no, they actually thought that the license plate matched a stolen car that they
A
were looking for.
motorcycle. It was a
Right.
motorcycle.
Oh, it was a
Yeah.
motorcycle?
No. They were in a car, but I'm
Oh,
saying
okay.
that what they were looking for was a stolen motorcycle.
Ah, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just
But yeah,
unacceptable.
I mean, and for everyone viewing, let's this. I'm just going to we're going to keep the volume off because it is so heart wrenching and so heartbreaking. But I think everyone, if you have not seen this yet, you actually do need to see this. So we're going to take a look at this really quickly and just take a view and just take a look at this and you know comment and let me know your opinions. And as you can see, it's 4 officers. Like, how many officers do you need for a situation like this? And this should not happen at all. These children should not be in handcuffs, much less on the ground.
That's crazy. I mean,
This is
honestly,
absolutely crazy.
it's so hard to watch. I just can't even imagine. And the horror. The other two girls were just like in tears. They were hysterical. And
Right.
they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Like, there's nothing, regardless of suspicion or not, there's nothing that you can say on why these children are on the floor being treated in this manner.
On the ground, not on the floor, on the
On
ground.
the ground.
On the
On
ground.
the ground.
The hard ground. In the middle of a public place. Come on, like outside. These girls are harmless. And it's, I can't even. Okay, I'm done. I can't watch that
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
I can't. It's just ridiculous.
So, I'm it's
Too much.
it's definitely too much. And this is why we have a topic like this tonight and going in depth in reference to the amount of the amount of the heinousness and it's just absolutely deplorable. And I do agree with you. I feel that these police officers, and it is not, and let's be clear, I just want to put this out there, it is not all police officers. But when it comes to our children, like this, there's no cause, rhyme, or reason for this. And
Unacceptable.
right, it's totally unacceptable.
As a human being, it's unacceptable to see this and to be a part of this. And these kids they were going to get their nails done. Like,
Right.
come on. I can't.
And like the authority, they're just totally like racially insensitive and disconnected. Just totally disconnected.
Yeah.
But with the Black Lives Movement the way it is now, and there's a few questions that we have to ask ourselves. I'm not a parent, but I do have friends that are parents, and I have godchildren as well. And when we sit down with our youth, are we asking how much can children actually digest of this type of information, right, at such a young age? And should we even shield them from it, or should we expose them to it?
Right.
And with social media and everything, like, being exposed to it is probably more leaning to that side of them getting this type of information. But as adults, my opinion is I definitely feel that we should, speak to our kids and let them know,
Absolutely.
as you said, like you speak to your son, and letting them know, like, these are the things you need to do and be aware when you are out with your friends or out by yourself or on your way out or on your way home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to build on that, I had a conversation with my sister and my brother this past week when I let them know what this topic was. And, my sister definitely, and it's funny because we all have boys. My mother is a grandmother to all boys.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's very keen on making sure that they are safe, and she communicates with them all the time. And especially when she knows that they're traveling or away from us.
Right.
But for this particular topic, my sister, definitely said that it's never too early to start talking about this in this climate.
Mm-hmm.
Probably in years past, when this wasn't so prevalent, you could
Mm-hmm.
probably do it on a situational basis, and which is what my brother does, because my brother's son is 6, so he is very young. It probably doesn't register to him, but I'm sure that he sees some of the images, and of course they guard him, they shield him on, what to expose him to. But just whenever the situation arises that they can kind of get a quick nugget in, they will. But now those nuggets are more like street blocks. Like you
Right.
have to talk to your kids about safety precautions. You have to talk to them about race relations. You have to talk to them about the fact that, yeah, we look different and people treat us differently because of that. And they probably won't understand it until they're, face to face with it in some way. And, but it's just unfortunate that we have to adapt to the climate. And now we have to absolutely talk to them at a very young age about what it means to be Black in America and the injustices that prevail.
And before we bring it, I guess I just want to add on to that and build on what you just said there. A large part of it also has to do with the communities that our children live in, the schools that they go to, and then just talking about social media again, right? So they're exposed to all of this, and I think there's a struggle sometimes where they feel like they're growing up in an era where they're seeing all this violence, they're seeing their people that represent their fathers, their mothers, their uncles, their aunts, and even friends that their age have gone through a certain experience similar to the video that we just viewed.
Yeah.
So, let's get a little deeper. Like I really want to have a conversation with our fantastic guest tonight.
Yeah, that's going to be very good conversation. So excited to actually introduce both of these dynamic women, both amazing in their own right, both mothers, both love their children dearly and would do anything for them and pour out everything, every ounce of themselves in their child to just make sure that they're brought up the proper way, have the best of everything, and they get the opportunity to participate in the things that life has to offer without any bias. So can't wait to talk to them. Can't wait to talk to them.
So let's learn a little bit about Leslie. Let's talk about her and bring her in
Leslie.
first.
Okay, so Leslie Hall is the president and founder of ICE Media, which is an award-winning digital agency that she's led for 2 decades. In Leslie's role, she helps drive business results for some of the biggest and fastest growing beauty, wellness, and lifestyle brands in the world. She lives in suburban New Jersey with her husband, Jermaine.
Jersey.
Dirty Jers. And her 2 sons, Jordan and Jude, who are both amazing children and beautiful. And she serves there in her town as communications director of her town's diversity committee, which is an amazing feat because I don't know that there's much diversity there, but let's bring her on in.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for having me here. I am very honored to join you.
Thank you for being with us tonight.
Especially for such an important topic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've had conversations about this before, so this is going to be a continuation in a different forum because it was just face to face. So, so I guess I can bring in KALIAH, right?
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay. KALIAH Ali is a fashion designer, a model, an author, and a real estate agent who lives in Philadelphia with her husband, my hometown, Philadelphia, with her husband, Spencer, and their son, Jacob. She is passionate about so many things, and she is completely an amazing public service humanitarian, an advocate for animal rights, and an advocate for environmental justice. She is KALIAH Ali Wertheimer.
Hi, KALIAH.
Hi, guys. Good to see you.
Thank you for being with us.
Thrilled to put whatever we can lend to this really very important dialogue. I'm just really feeling very blessed and humbled to be here with all of you and to meet you, Leslie. And, as mothers, speak to something that our nation is dealing with. And I think oftentimes things start at home first and from us women and mothers in general. So thrilled to be a part.
So let's have a candid conversation this evening on this topic, and I kind of want let's get some background as far as having conversations with your children about the current state of affairs that we actually live in today. What is your approach, better yet, on going about sitting them down and making sure that they're well guarded and aware?
I'm happy to jump in since I spoke last. I noticed that you mentioned biracial, and I've never raised my son to be biracial. I raise him as a Black man. I think part of the Black experience in this country is that we are a very varied people. I've often heard us termed and nicknamed the rainbow race for a reason. Aria, touching on what you just said previously, we are what people perceive and how the world sees you and takes you. And I've had a few friends who chose to raise their children biracial, and I noted that they had a lot of complexities in their mind, a lot of questions they needed answered. We've never encountered any of those difficulties in our house. Jacob, my son, acknowledges that he has a varied background ethnically, and we celebrate and we acknowledge all of that. But his soul and his heart, how he was raised to be a strong and very proud Black man.
Yes.
Okay.
That's beautiful. I love that.
And I would agree absolutely with KALIAH, and especially myself as a white person. I understood and needed to understand very early on, as a mother of first one Black son and now two Black sons, that the world would see my children as Black. And it's not them denying that, they have a Caucasian side of their family by identifying as Black. It's the world will see them as Black, and therefore they need to identify as Black. They are Black men from the day they were born. And that's important, that matters. And that's how they see themselves. That's how the world sees them. That's how they identify. And that's something we have immense pride around, and something that we have celebrated since the day they were born, both of them.
That's beautiful.
So with that said, would you say, I just kind of want to get your experience raising both of them as young Black men in the wake of the Black Lives Matter climate?
So as a white person, I recognize that I will never understand what it's like to live, especially in America, as a Black person. I believe that I have a unique lens as a white person, witnessing some of the microaggressions or everyday conscious and unconscious bias experiences that my husband and my children have, especially living in an environment and community that has, I believe, less than 1% African Americans in our community. So what I try to do is listen and learn and do the best job that I can, not understanding that it's not the responsibility of Black people to teach white people how to do better. It's the responsibility of white people to recognize that these injustices exist and do better, and be allies and learn really what it means to be an ally. And I try to do that as well. But there's a term I learned recently in one of the books that I'm reading called insider status. And the way that the book explains it is that as a white person, sometimes other white people might be more likely to listen to me on issues of intolerance or lack of inclusion or racial injustice than they would than they may listening to a person of color talking about those same topics. So using my privilege or my insider status, as the book explains, to try to educate others, especially in my community. That's another thing. I've done a good amount of volunteer work in these areas with other activists. And what I also understood is that on a grassroots level here in my own community, that I potentially have a greater opportunity to drive more results, thinking about, how to do things on a smaller scale. So that's what I try to do. I try to contribute in the ways that I believe can be most helpful, but I also recognize that as a white person, I really have so much to learn, and I try to listen and learn more than I speak, which, as Aria can tell you, as we've known each other for quite some time, I am not always a great listener and learner, and I generally talk a lot, but on this topic specifically, I'm really trying to listen and learn more.
Okay.
That's beautiful. I love it.
Kayla.
Oh, same question. I fell so deep into our conversation. I'm just going to pick where you left off. I was blessed to be raised with a man who instilled great pride in me. My father having been Boxer Muhammad Ali and a significant voice in America, much less the civil rights movement. And it never really occurred to me, also growing up in a similar neighborhood to your son did, that in any way someone could think I was inferior because of the color of my skin.
Right.
Quite the opposite. And I feel like I was very blessed to begin and be seated and rooted in my life in that manner. And a lot of that has matriculated and lended itself to my parenting. On my maternal side, there's a lot of mixed, so to speak, ancestry as well. So by the time I had Jacob, it really wasn't like a special, unique situation. It just kind of was a natural process, I think is the best way to put it. But at the same time, being very cognizant and aware of the realities that we face today. And as a mother, speaking to her fear, I feel it all the time, and what you said previously, especially when he's out with his friends and there are numbers larger than 1 or 2 or 3, it heightens the sense of danger and fear that you have, the anxiety. And to acknowledge that, we all deal with it in different ways. There's many multitudes of that fear. This isn't, a monolithic bubble of how we all experience this. We all experience it differently for different reasons, but the result is still the same.
Absolutely.
And, as a mother, in some ways, I always like to try to look for the silver lining or the gift out of this. How can you be better? How can you be stronger as a result of this? And not looking at it as, or perceiving it as a disability of some sort, a negative, but how do we make this a positive? And I feel like a lot of that is, going back to how I was raised as a young Black child. Look, you're going to have to be better, or look, you're going to have to be a little smarter, a little more tolerant, a little more wiser. So I think as a mother, it just became an opportunity, and a teaching lesson for him, one, to always, of course, experience his grandfather and his work, and 2, really be in touch with history, not just how and as he was taught in school, but Black history as well, which he's become one of his majors. I'll let him speak to that later.
Love it.
And you said to make him a more powerful and in touch human being, with the world around him. Because I like you live in a 1% neighborhood, and we've always Little League was always in the city. We traveled, just constantly making sure that he was aware of much more than his surroundings.
Yeah.
So it seems as if there is a very a direct but still yet open approach in educating, in educating Jacob, right? And
Yeah.
I could also probably assume as well that he goes out on his own to educate himself.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I wanted him to be with Dr. Cornell West when he was making application to school at the time. Dr.
Right.
West was at Princeton, and he actually went back to Harvard the day Jacob gained admissions to Harvard. And I was so excited because I felt that he could instill in Jacob insight, wisdom, values, principles that I couldn't, and a sense
Right.
of history in such a loving, robust way that I couldn't even begin to access. That's what he did for
Right.
me in college,
Right.
my own self. And so for Jacob, a lot of this was just, it's out of his own natural disposition and being. Again,
That's
it's
excellent.
how he was seeded and grown. But I
Mhm.
think that's ultimately the goal of parenting, isn't it? It is to give your children the foundation that they need to go out in the world and develop themselves.
Right.
And I'm just so touched and honored by who I see he is, so much so that as a parent with great humility, I'm able to come back and say, he's even bought me. I mean, well, he'll call me. You'll see it later. Jacob will keep it very real.
Right.
He's even grown me. I've
Right.
learned so much from my son, and it's one of the great beauties of COVID and working with him during this whole movement, and hopefully it's more than a movement, Black Lives Matter. Just watching him blossom and grow. And then lastly, I'll say community service is a very big deal for us in this house. I serve on over 10 different boards and organizations. I had Jacob in the Congo at the age
Wow.
of 10. We're in
Uh-huh.
Australia doing conservation initiatives at 7. He has spent Christmas mornings and Thanksgiving mornings in my shelters, for a multitude of reasons. One, my favorite poem on my father's is Me, We. So you understand that we're all inextricably bound, that no one is separate,
Yeah. Right.
and how our actions affect everyone. Two, it was a really great way for him to see who my father was in ways that I could have never given him, because I believe that spoke to the highest part of his soul and why people loved him. And three, I'm a Quaker schoolgirl. It's what we do. I think it's the right thing to do. Community service is an integral part of my life, and there's very few things that we required of Jacob in this house as a human being, and one of the three was community service and giving back. I think my one quote of my dad's was, "Service is the rent we pay for living here on earth."
Absolutely.
I do believe
Right.
that.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
So to piggyback off that, Leslie, how is it in your home? How do you go about helping to educate Jordan to along the lines of today's between Black Lives Matter and the overall climate? So is it more sitting at home, or do you rely on school, or is it a plethora of things?
So we definitely try to expose him as much as we can. Early on, we recognized that in order to expose him to certain educational curriculums and, other people who look more like him, that may not be available in our community. So we did send him to school outside of our community where, those types of curriculums and a more progressive education would be available. And that's something, quite honestly, we feel conflicted about, right? My mother, who's a tremendous humanitarian and advocate for, everyone in my entire life. And, so much of her values is who I am, from, marching with Indigenous communities on Columbus Day from when I was very young is something, memory that I always have.
Okay.
And, was a public school teacher for over 30 years, right? So I felt conflicted about that, but, ultimately decided that it was more important for Jordan to be surrounded by people that look more like him in a more progressive, school. And
Right.
that was really important. My husband also, in his career as a journalist, works on a lot of content that is, certainly more educational in that way. You know, he recently launched a site that's specifically for Black men 30 plus, and, you know, a blog that's specifically focused on civil rights and criminal justice and mass incarceration, and getting the word out about those issues. I'm an active volunteer in our community with a lot of those issues, and Jordan from a very young age has done a lot of speaking engagements on those topics specifically, and to see him at 10 and 11 and 12 years old stand in front of, you know, hundreds of white people, you know, in a sea of people in front of him, and talk about very personal experiences of racism and name calling, to try to explain to them what it feels like when other children are cruel in that way, so that they can have some sense of understanding about those experiences. It's such a pride point to me, right? Because it's always, you know, putting those opportunities in front of him, and never in a way that's forceful, but seeing him rise to the occasion with such pride. You know, recently we had a vigil for Black Lives that we held. It was put together by students in our community. And, you know, he went up in front of our town's gazebo in the middle of COVID with 100 people in the audience, probably 99% of them Caucasian, and talked about Tamir Rice, a fellow 12-year-old who himself was killed in front of a gazebo, and told that story so bravely in front of all of those people. And I think it's moments like that that really I have so much pride for, but at the same time are so heartbreaking, because as a white person, I can't relate to those stories in the same way that he must. But I also understand that it's so important for him to be exposed to that type of content and the true American history that in so many curriculum is just not told. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so with that, would you say that race relations, like the learning curve, better yet, is the same for someone who isn't from a racially diverse background?
Sorry, your question is the learning curve the same or different?
Correct.
It's entirely different, right? Because for white people, they can shut off their browser or turn off their television and racism doesn't exist.
Right.
Because it's
and close themselves off from it.
Right. They can just turn it off, because they may not know Black people. I mean, they might know Black people, like, oh, I have a coworker and that person's Black, but they might not know that person, like really know them. And it's a convenience, it's a luxury that they have to not, right? That's why it's so easy for white people to deny racism, because they can never experience it. And it's a choice for them. It's a choice for them to acknowledge it. It's a choice for them to understand it. And quite honestly, for most white people, it's an inconvenience to have to deal with it. And it's a massive learning curve to understand that, you know, everything in our society, really in America, was created for white people. And that's the inequity,
is true.
Right?
That is true.
That's the inequity, and that's what this movement is about. And it's going to take a lot of hard work by a lot of people to start undoing that. So it's important for my children to understand that and understand those truths, as difficult as it is. And like I said, I'm trying to do a lot more learning and listening as a white person, because I understand that it's not my platform and it's not my movement, but I want to support and help in positive ways as best as I can.
In absence of my husband's presence here, he's Jewish. And so I think for us with Jacob, I never considered Jacob like a half white child because, you know, we have some shared experiences, though different walks, but shared experiences. And that he being Jewish was able to be one step closer to understanding they come for me, they're coming for you too.
Right.
You know, we're on the same hate list, and it was an opportunity for Jacob, for the other part of his lineage, to explore and learn about the Holocaust and learn about the current day atrocities happening to Jewish people around the world. And so for us in our house, you know, it was more of a shared experience than almost like kissing cousins in a way, than me feeling that he had a white father. You know, in fact, I've never ever thought of it that way, quite honestly.
Well, I mean, and I pose this question to both of you, and this is something that has been to piggyback on what you just said. You know, this is a topic and a question that has been brought up. So the fact that there's shared experiences as far as people or individuals are coming for you, as you said, right? What would you say to your son if he was with a friend that was black, all right? And both parents are black, and say they went to the store and for some reason, you know, the store clerk or an attendant or someone approached his friend, but gave your son like the green light to like, oh, you're okay, but I think your friend stole something, for example. Like, would you like, how would you approach a situation like that? Because if your son has a takeaway that he's
He gets a pass.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely been in like scenarios. He's been in like scenarios. There was actually one incident at his school where a couple young men who fit no description of the four grown men they were looking for. He went to a very conservative prep school. They were in uniform.
Right.
They were looking for four grown men. These were four boys in uniform, random, and were tossed on the ground, just like we saw in video, and completely checked. Fortunately, one of the mothers were driving by who kind of fit the scenario of what you're saying. You know, still a black woman, a physician, driving an expensive car, was able to level the situation out, you know, with her presence, so to speak. And you know, I know with Jacob, he himself is also pretty sensitive to the fact, as I am to a certain extent, that, again, as I said previously, as a black person, you know, our experiences, it's not a monolithic bubble. It's not the same thing. You know, just by virtue of the shade of our skin or our accent we might have, or how we choose to wear our hair on any given day. And God knows I'm up to all in that area. So, but I can, you know, how people choose to perceive us and treat us with just such subtle differences. Racism is that, God, I'd love to use a more eloquent word, but it's disgusting. You know, just subtle differences shift our experience. In the case of my son, sometimes people have often racially taken him for other things, other ethnicities. And I'm sure that changes his reality and how he goes about the world in his day. He has another friend with a very similar background ethnically who is much more pronounced in his African ancestry, and he has a very different reality. You know, and it just again speaks to how subtle and divisive racism can be. And I know that Jacob is very aware of that and cognizant of it.
Yeah, and I mean,
days, where were we? We were on the porch. We're in the house. We're in the field. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've been blown away by both of you, and you know, your approach to this, and your sons. I am so much a fan, and that's what I told Mia. I'm so much a fan of Jacob and Jordan. I had a conversation with Jordan a few weeks ago, and I asked him to be on the show because the way that he approached this topic was something like I was speaking to a 35-year-old person who had just.
Remember Ari was telling me about that. I was like, yeah, we got to have him on. We got to have him on.
I mean, honestly, just amazing, and that shows, that's a testament to the kind of parents that you both are, and your husbands. Just raising a genuinely caring, person who does not look at anything except the kindness in someone else, what's right and what's wrong, looks for an equitable society, and really is standing behind it. Is standing behind his word, making sure that he's showing up in a way that he can effect change. And I think that's so admirable. So, round of applause to you both
Yes,
Yeah.
and your
definitely,
husbands for raising
definitely.
such amazing children.
It's the best thing. I think it's the greatest contribution that we'll ever leave on this earth. And children are always our greatest asset, and they're the one investment that everything you put into, you get out of 100%. I mean, there's nothing that will ever be or more significant to me than being a mother. And I think as parents, especially when I look at Jordan at his age, it makes me so hopeful for the future and
Yeah.
what's to come, knowing he's in the world, and his generation coming up through all of this right now. They're just going to be brighter and stronger and better for it. I'm hoping that we rear another one of those great generations in America, because we could use
It's coming. It's coming. It's definitely coming. And we don't have much time, so I want to get your kids in here to talk to them too.
Oh, I can't. That's my
Yes.
favorite part.
Let's bring them in. Let's bring them in. Jacob, Jordan.
Kiss on him. Being like he's an actual man.
I know. Yeah, my son is
Uh-oh.
like, I'm not having it. Don't touch me. Don't talk to me. I'm doing my own thing. So,
Gentlemen,
guys.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good.
I'm excellent. I'm excellent. So let's start with Jacob. Like, do you remember how old you were when you first started having a conversation about race relations in your household, or with friends, for that matter?
For me, that was from birth. I think you can't grow up the grandson of Muhammad Ali without having some discussion of the realities of race in America, just as a part of your upbringing.
Right.
It was thoroughly ingrained in my mother, I think, since she was a little girl, and she naturally ingrained that in me, as well as the influence from my grandfather growing up. And with my friends, I mean, considering that most of my friends growing up were Black, it was just a natural part of our experience growing up.
Right.
Growing up together and experiencing these things, and it was just a natural part of our upbringing as a group of friends.
Awesome. How about you, Jordan?
I feel like there were like subtle, I wouldn't want to say hints, but like got told parts of it.
Mhm.
And then I remember one specific time, I was 5 years old, and I was playing like at camp with someone, and they like shoved me out of like their social group and called me dark skin. And I went home and I was like, oh, why did that happen, Mom? And then I really got the full picture that, that's gonna happen.
Oh.
And
Right.
that is something that will happen.
Yeah, that's. I'm sorry you had to go through that experience.
Absolutely. But I'm sure it made you so much stronger.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so this is a really, tough topic, but it's a topic that we I love that we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
And Jacob, like, have you experienced any type of racism or injustice in the past? Like, do you remember like a specific story about racism at all, or?
Sure. I mean, I can remember something as recent as, last summer when I went, me and a bunch of my friends, we all went to our friend's Mike's house. He lives in kind of a more affluent neighborhood. And I remember one of my friends was coming over late, and he parked his car down the street, and he's walking down the street to the house.
Right.
And the white woman who lived next door called the police on him just for walking down the street.
Right. How
And,
did that make you feel?
I mean, we felt attacked. We felt this was kind of our safe space. We're in our friend's house. We're just in the home, and here come the police knocking on the door. And
Right.
every single person at
Right.
my friend Mike's house at that night, we're all Black. And for a group of us to kind of happen to open the door to a police officer, knowing what that situation kind of looks like or could lead to with our group being there in a white neighborhood, it was really kind of a jarring experience. it was really an uncomfortable moment for us. But when it comes to kind of experiences of racism, I think that something that's really important to understand is, if you look back to the history of lynching, for example, right? When we speak about the victims of lynching, it extends more past the thousands who were lynched. We speak about the victims of lynching in terms of millions. Because lynching, for example, was something that was done very intentionally, in which you raised the body high so everybody had to see. It was a visual
Right, on display.
right? It was on display. And when you look at racism in America, and you look at what's going on today, it's very much on display in very much the same way. I think something that needs to be discussed more is how all people of color are terrorized today and have to live with the terror
Absolutely.
of the public executions that exist, or even just the awareness of the systems that are meant to just dismantle our lives and destabilize our communities, right?
Right.
My mom, I know, has to deal with the stress of when I leave the house, when I go see my friends, anything that I do. And I have to live with the stress of, one, is something going to happen to me, but two, knowing that my mother has to suffer just because I exist in this way.
Right.
And that's okay.
That's such an adult thought and an adult conversation that you really shouldn't have to have at your age. And I mean, my heart goes out to both of you for being in that position. I have a son. My son's about your age, Jacob. And just as I was saying before, your moms came in, it kills me to let go, and to allow him to go out and be with his friends. But you can't be that way. You have to allow them to experience life. And I just pray that, and the things that I've instilled in him about making smart choices, being a leader and not a follower, making sure that he's the one that levels the situation, and making sure that he's the one that has his wits about him. If in fact there's ever a situation that occurs that someone flies off the handle, there's nothing that you can say in that moment that's going to change what the outcome is going to be, because the outcome has already been predetermined based on the other person, because you can't control what they do and you can't control them. So my heart goes out. I'm just thinking about it now, and it's just making me really giving me anxiety just to think about it all together.
It does.
And just listening to all of the mothers here, and as a Black man, I do want to say my heart does go out as well. But on the positive side, I do want to say that I am proud of all of you for directing your children in the right direction. Even at the adult age that I'm at, my mother feels the same way. Like when I go out and I'm a grown man, and it's a situation where you have to be steadfast and with having a total sense of awareness of where you're going, who you're with, the time that you're going out, your location, having ID on your person, having your phone charged.
Yes.
These are all the steps that people that are outside of being Black and brown do not necessarily, I'm not going to say they don't experience it, but they do not experience to the lividity that we experience it as Black men. So I do applaud both of you young men for dealing with the situations, encountering and dealing with the situations that you've encountered. So I definitely want to applaud you for that.
Yeah, when it comes
proud
to
mamas, proud mamas.
when it comes to dealing with racism, something that's also important to understand is, just like you said, right? There's all these little things that are kind of instilled to us and what we have to do just going out on the day to day, right? When I go into a store, I have to keep my hands out my pockets, right? I got to make sure my hood is down. And those little things, people don't often think of it as racism because nobody did something to me. But that's living within a racist structure at its core, right? That in and of itself is a racist experience that we're forced to live through every single day and every single action that we take.
Right, because systemic racism hasn't changed; it's expanded
and evolved.
Right, exactly.
Right. Comes in all different shapes and sizes. We can't even what it is nowadays.
So, and either Jacob or Jordan, I would say Jacob, you can go first. what have you done to support the Black Lives Matter movement? I know your mom spoke on some points. Can you expound on a little bit of those for me, if you could?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's kind of where I see where my life is dedicated to. I'm very fortunate to have the education I have as a student at Harvard University. Uh, and I intend to completely use that education and leverage that education as a tool to make a difference.
Right.
After I finish my undergraduate concentration studying African American studies and government, I intend to go to law school and pursue the law and use the law as a tool
Excellent.
in which to kind of rewrite some of these structures that exist. I'm writing a thesis on mass incarceration.
Oh my God.
That was one of my main areas of focus. I spent last summer working for the Juvenile Law Center. I'm fighting for juvenile rights, because juvenile rights is another area that, one, there's a larger issue of juveniles in America, but two, of course, it's an issue that's very much racially colored and coded. So spending that time there, and this summer before COVID came in, I was going to spend time at the Equal Justice Initiative with Brian Stevenson in Alabama, in the Supreme Court, working with people on death row and things like that, and just kind of analyzing these issues using the law as a way to fight them.
Right.
It's a long struggle, but it's where I see my life being dedicated to.
Yes.
Excellent. Very happy to hear that. Very proud of you. Jordan, how about you? Like, what have you, your mom also said that you've been speaking in front of very large crowds.
Yeah. I did what my mom talking about Tamir Rice, which is so sad that happened. Like, when I remember when my mom told me about it, like, I didn't understand it because my mom never let me use Nerf guns, and I was like, that's so annoying. But now I understand. Like when I first heard it, I was like, oh, come on, Mom. But now I get
Now it makes sense.
why she was so protective and why, terrible. I did, I think, 2 or 3 protests. One of them I took my white friends to it was in Summit. I took 2 of my white friends, and I hope they understand a bit more about the injustice and the daily struggles of being Black in America. So public speaking, protests, and honestly just educating them in general. Like it's like an everyday occurrence. Like they say something that they don't, what's the word? They say something and I don't think they realize
it's not the right thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The future is bright.
Yes.
Very bright.
Listening to Jordan, I mean, Jordan and Jacob, I'm a bit of the generational thing, but between the both of them, I mean, this is really what it's about. And I mean, to be 12 years old and so actively engaged and passionately speaking is just phenomenal.
Yes.
Thank you.
So excellent. I'll just ask one more question. What do Jacob and Jordan, what do you want people to know about race relations moving forward? Because both of you are definitely heading in the right direction. So, for future endeavors in the education that both of you are attaining and using it in a format that will help to guide, because as we all know, and the mothers on a panel can attest to this, that the youth will always lead the way, right? Open new doors and new avenues of thinking. So to both of you young men, what do you want people to know about race relations moving forward?
Yeah, I guess I can go first on this question. I mean, one, I want people to become educated about what the realities of this situation are. I want people to truly understand the systems of mass incarceration, the cases that were able to make such a thing created, right? Nobody taught me the case of Plesky versus Kemp, Supreme Court case in which the court effectively legalized racial discrimination across the country in sentencing, right? Most people aren't taught these kinds of things. Most people don't know the realities of the death penalty and how it's administered in this country. Most people aren't aware of how these systems of mass incarceration were built in the first place and systematically and intelligently designed to make people ignore the racial factor when it's still completely about race. You have someone from the Nixon administration admitting that the war on drugs was created to criminalize Black people. And most people are just completely unaware of these facts. And one, beyond that base knowledge, then we need to understand that this is something that's often called a black problem. I think that's a complete misstatement, because to call it a black problem means that black people are the problem.
Right.
This is a problem of white supremacy. This is a problem of particularly white Americans in this country, and their feeling of, one, superiority, but two, the fact that other people just aren't even human. Right. The willingness to support these systems of oppression, and that even if you're not a racist, it's not enough to say I'm not racist and just sit by. You have to use your voice. You have to act. It's partially upon you to dismantle the structure of supremacy that people of your community have built. Because even if you're not racist, you still benefit from those systems of oppression.
Yes.
Right.
And that's
right. And
it's
right. And to your point, it's breaking down the structure and rebuilding.
Yes.
Right. That whole 3/5 is still present. It's still present, to your point. Jordan?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
So for the past 2 years, my classmates, everyone has been taught about, this year was American history. We dipped into slavery for a good chunk, like probably 2 months, I want to say. And last year, part of our social studies unit was like 60s and 70s racism, and what happened during those times and how we fought and brought down a lot of racist laws. And I think you need to first act on it. You need to understand what's happening and why it's so bad. I think you need to know the history. I think what I want anyone who's ignorant to the daily problems and daily combatants to police that Black people face, you need to understand the history. And they're obviously in the 60s and 70s, like not drinking at the same water fountain. That's terrible. But you don't have to spray hoses at Black people to be a racist. There are small things that you can do to just unconsciously be a racist towards anyone, specifically Black people. So I think I want people to understand the history, and once you understand, be able to act on it and catch yourself when you are saying something in ignorance or saying something just random tidbits, like every day, like just someone says something random, not thinking. Think before you speak, I think.
Absolutely.
Understand, think before you speak, all of that.
Speaking up, to build on Jordan's point, what he said reminded me of a quote by W.B. Du Bois that's always really spoken to me. And he said, one cannot be a calm, cool, and detached scientist while Black people are lynched, murdered, and starved. And that's something that exists still, and it still rings true to this day, right? And as long as you're aware of what's going on, right? And I think most people in this country are aware, whether or not they want to accept it or not. How can you sit back? How can you ignore that reality? I think it's a question a lot of people need to ask themselves.
I'm going to stop right there. I am, as a Black man, I am very, very proud of both of you. I am very confident that the future will be brighter with the both of you going out into this world and continue doing what you are doing. Stay educated, stay aware, stay present, and stay proud.
Yes. I just want to read off a couple of the comments because everyone is so blown away, just as I am, about you, Jordan and Jacob. And then especially the parents. So one person said, Sunil, wonderful parents and sons. And then another one, very poignant, and he is awake and conscious. The trauma that the children bear is heavy, knowing a situation can rapidly change and how everything they do affects the moms, dads, and kids. This is wonderful. It's wonderful to hear from the children. They give hope for the future. And then regarding the gunplay, Jordan, yes, no to gunplay. It is real for those of us aware and of how dangerous it is for Black boys. And then Jacob, I see a correspondent for MSNBC on this podcast. And, and then just to wrap it all up into a nice little bow, we've been enlightened. I've learned things. I'm so amazed and in amazement of the parenting and the community of support that exists in these young, amazing kings. And I cannot wait to see more. I just want to jump through the computer and hug you, but we're social distancing, so I can't. And then one more just came in. You guys make the world a better place. I mean, kudos to you and to
Yes, absolutely.
help shape how you view society. And I can't wait to see what you have in store for our future. If everyone's like you, then I'm going to just take a seat and watch.
Right. I also want to, because the fruit would not exist if it wasn't for the roots, right, of the tree. And I want to thank both of the moms and dads. Dads are not here, but I want to thank them as well. You have
those guys just a little yeah.
I definitely you have raised wonderful young men. Continue the great work going forward. And I just want to thank both of you for being who you are and just continue the fight. Just continue the fight.
We know about a fight.
That's right.
We do know about a fight. So we're ready.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks, Leslie, Jordan, and Jacob.
Of course.
And don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Like I want to speak to you guys offline, so don't leave yet, okay?
Thank you
All
for
right.
having us.
Will do.
Absolutely.
Pleasure being on.
Thank you
you.
so much.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, and more wow. I mean, I'm sitting here like my heart is like beating 100.
Beat to your chest.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I've seen Jacob speak before, and that's when I brought it to the attention of my girlfriend Mia. I sent her the articles and sent her the videos, and I was like, who is this? And she's like, that's my nephew. He's such a sweetie, so it's just amazing that it just came to this, just to hear him talk about his experiences and talk about where we need to be,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
the level of his knowledge about this at such a young age, it's just incredible.
And I'm definitely glad to hear, the fact that they are so versed in Black history and searching for it, right? Searching for it and wanting to build for it, and not just taking the information and storing it, but taking the information and sharing it. Absolutely. And taking steps to make change, right? Because that's the whole premise behind this, is to make change.
Definitely.
So definitely a wonderful conversation. And, with that, we're going to end here. Aria, thank you again.
Thank you. This was so amazing. Thank you so much. You just keep getting better.
And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Again, we will be back. This is the new time. By the way. Every Sunday, 7 p.m. Catalyst Lifestyle, the podcast. Catalyst Lifestyle on YouTube, Catalyst Conversation on Facebook, and Catalyst Lifestyle on Twitter and Instagram. On YouTube, please subscribe, hit the like button, tell a friend to tell a friend, and share with everyone. Leave a comment below, and we'll definitely respond back. And we will be back next weekend. It's going to be. You thought this was deep? It's going to get spicy on the next one. This is going to get spicy. Aria, thank you again. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank my guests for being on. And again, I just want to say our closer, all we got is us. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you. And we will see you next week. Thank you. Thank you. We love you all. We appreciate it. And signing out.